What's up, everyone? Welcome back to whatever this is. Something that we learned earlier today is that JCMS 85 is currently not able to do Meta Monday this week, and we're not sure if that's going to be coming back or not, because I know that he recently started a new job, he's got a lot going on, so he doesn't really have the same amount of time in order to dedicate to giving us fun data on 40k stuff. So I figured, this might be a one-time thing. If you guys like it, let me know down in the comments and whatnot, but I'm going to be going over some of the new stuff that's been going on in the guard meta and how it evolves, and take you through a couple of lists and different events that we actually saw them being played at. Like I said, if this is something you enjoy, let me know. But for the most part, what we're going to be doing today is I've been maintaining this sheet for a while now. When did I actually start? January of 2024, I've been maintaining this document. So if you are interested in seeing any lists that people have been playing for the past, oh wow, almost 2 years at this point, I've been looking at them in this document. And the requirements in order to get onto the spreadsheet are you need to play at least 5 rounds in uh, over the course of like 2 days, usually, or over the course of like a weekend. I don't track leagues. It has to be a singles event, and you need to go at least 4-1. I don't really care how many players there were at the event. Like, as long as there's like more than like 15, realistically, I'll take a look at it. But it does mean that we get to see a lot of fun stuff going on, and I use this in a lot of ways because I don't think I'm a very good list builder. I don't think I'm particularly good at looking for like new combinations and things that are undiscovered. It's not really the part of the game that I really spend a lot of time doing, and so I am unashamedly a net lister. I go on and find all the other lists that people have. I take a look at what they're playing, and then maybe I'll make a couple of tweaks, or maybe there's some units that I don't have access to or whatever, and I'll make some small adjustments. But for the most part, I just copy good stuff that other people are playing, and realistically, I think most people should as well. So, excuse me. So if you are interested in like trying to find all this kind of stuff, there will be a link down in the description. Um, yeah, if this is useful to you, cool. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at it. What we've been seeing over this week, I'm going to start with this tab, actually. We had a total of 31 players playing a bunch of different events, and we had an overall win rate of 53.5%. Now, something to note, we had, on average, some pretty darn good players this weekend. One of the big things that you will note is that Dan Sammons, who is over 2,000 elo, which is ridiculous. I believe that puts him in like the top 5 players in the world, was playing guard this weekend, and he played 6 rounds. This is pretty high. You can see like last week was also fair, like high average, average median, and then you can kind of see like based on what week. Sometimes we're going to have like stronger players playing on average. Like a while back, we had a really bad weekend overall. This weekend was pretty high. We had a really high average, and we also had a remarkably high median. On average, we had more good players playing this weekend than weaker players. So that's part of why we had a 53.5% win rate over the 31 players that did participate. But with that in mind, some of the big things that we've been seeing is that at least this weekend, we had a lot more variety in the kind of things that people were playing as compared to what we've been seeing a lot of the time. Throughout most of the past several weeks, it was basically combined hammer, combined hammer, combined hammer. Every now and then you get someone to play like Mechanized Assault or Bridgehead, but these tended to be relatively uncommon. This weekend, though, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players go 4-1 or better, and we had 1 mechanized, 1, 2, 3 combined, 1 hammer, and 1 bridgehead. So, I mean, a pretty good variety over this last weekend. It is worth noting that several of these events, Chalon Kelly Irvin and Matthew Vick, both played at relatively small events. So it's not necessarily the biggest and like highest tier events that we could potentially be looking at, but for a lot of people, that's what they had access to, and they did well. So let's go ahead and take a look through some of the different things that are going on. If my dog comes over, I will show him off. But one of the first ones that we had. Oh, we'll do this one last because this is actually new patch stuff. But we had Neil Burns Morales, a player who fairly often finds his way onto these spreadsheets. He was playing combined arms, and it's pretty normal stuff. For most of these combined arm stuff, I'm going to go and just like talk about some of the more interesting things we actually saw inside them. One of them, it looks like he had like 40 points left over. Took a Commissar with the Death Mask of Alanius. Doesn't really do. I don't think this does anything. He would have to attach it for this to actually do anything because the Commissar, I believe, is only 1 OC to start. But he has a Commissar as an extra scoring piece. He has a Tech Priest as well. I'm assuming it's following around one of the Rogaldorn commanders. But Cadians, 1 20 brick of Krieg, 1 Torox, 1 Kazarkin, 1, 2, 3 Lemur's Battle Tanks, all with Melta, 2 units of Ogren, 1 unit of Rattlings, and another Rogaldorn. So this is generally, it's pretty standard in a lot of ways. It has all of the good stuff and none of the stuff that I don't like as much. But it's got 3 Dorns, 3 battle tanks. It just puts out a lot of damage. Now, one of the things you always have to count is how many orders does this list have. It has 3, 4, 5 squadron orders, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that really like orders, but these Lemur's battle tanks don't necessarily need it. So I'm expecting this probably was a list where you just have, your Ogren and your Kazarkin going out to skirmish. This looks like a Kazarkin in a Torox, and then otherwise you just send this over to your natural. And this is a very violent list in general. You're really relying on just like the amount of damage that you're able to put out with all of your tanks, and ask your opponent if they really want to be charging your Kazarkin and your Ogren and your Rattlings, because anything that goes out to deal with these models is going to get immediately blasted afterwards. And suddenly, the issue with not having as many squadron orders as you have squadron vehicles becomes less important, because all of a sudden, you're now in a position where you're going to have to start using your Lemur's battle tanks to skirmish a little bit earlier. But Neil, how did he do? Neil went 4-1 at a 32 person event. And something to note is that because he lost his first round, he did not necessarily have like the strongest of opponents throughout the whole thing. But he did go 4-1. He regularly makes it on here, so not holding that against him in any way. The other player who also went 4-1 at this event, Connor Reynolds, a player that I'm not used to seeing nearly as often. But Connor is playing a Hammer of the Emperor, and again, this was pretty standard from all the things that we're used to seeing. Gaunt's Ghost, 1, 2, 3 Rogaldorn commanders, 1 Tech Priest, and one of them had the Indomitable Steed, that is the 6-up Philopane, and one of them had the reroll 1s Veteran Crew. 1 unit Kidney Shock Troops, this is standard in almost every list, just stand in your home. 1, 2, looks like 2 units of Kazarkin, 1, 2 Krieg, Heavy Weapon Squad with Flamers, 2 units of Rattlings, 1 Exterminator, 1 Scout Sentinel, and then 1, 2, 3 Toroxes. I'm going to guess that you put Kazarkin, and then the other one probably has both Heavy Flamer teams inside, or potentially has 2 units of Rattlings. Either way, pretty standard stuff for Hammer. 3 Dorns, some number of Kazarkin and Toroxes, and then the other, like the big thing that we see that's a little bit more unusual here. Firstly, Heavy Bolters and the Exterminator. Don't like that, but that's okay. It still went 4-1. What about his... Okay, these all have Meltas. Not my favorite to have the melted nipples, but still, it is whatever. In Hammer, it probably makes a little bit more sense because you tend to play a little bit closer range. But these Krieg Heavy Weapon Squads, pay attention to them because we see a lot more people playing them as well. But he also went 4-1 this weekend, also at the Port City GT. Okay. So that's Neil and Connor. Next, we're going to take a look at Brian. Brian, this is his second time showing up on this spreadsheet with Bridgehead, I believe, in the past couple of weeks, because we have this one here, and I swear we saw him. Yeah, so he also went 4-1 at Owen's Breaking Point a couple of weeks ago, and this looks like almost an identical list to the one he played before. This time was at Flying Monkey Con, where he went 5-1 and only lost to Dan Sammons in the last round. And this is something that we have been seeing. So we have been seeing a little bit more Bridgehead. One of the things that a lot of people have been looking at with Bridgehead is it kind of struggled into the night meta a little bit, but it's not as though it doesn't have the damage, and you still have a lot of OC to throw around, and you can still do a lot of the cool things that we see in Recon, simply because you have a lot of infantry bodies. But let's take a look at what Brian has actually been playing. He played 1 Keating Command Squad, 1, 2, 3 Militarum Tempestus Command Squads. What did he actually take? Medipack, Melta, Plasma, and opting for all the volley guns, and then Plasma, Plasma, Plasma. So no command rods. Ursula Creed is standard. The 1 Cadian Shock Troops, again, very standard. 1, 2, 10-man units of Death Corps of Krieg. This unit has been kind of growing in popularity a little bit ever since Wesley St. Hines, aka Nemo the Fish, has been playing this a lot in his recon. People have been looking at them again. We got 1, 2, 3 units of 10 Tempestus Scions, all with Melta Plasma. And this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting and really diverges a lot from where we were looking at Bridgehead lists previously, and starts looking a little bit more like some of the recon lists that we've been seeing Nemo play. You got 1, 2, 3 units of 5 Talon Rough Riders, 1 Cyclops Demolition Vehicle, which I believe is the only vehicle in the entire list. It is. This denies Bring It Down redraws and screens our backfield. You have 1 unit of Death Riders, which is another unit that is becoming popular. I was really liking this during right before the Knights meta really took off, right before the Death Guard meta really took off, and they just became they became really unexciting in the meta where there's a lot of Plague Burst Crawlers because they just die. And the other thing that made them less exciting is that they just don't do any damage, and five bodies is right at the level where a lot of knights will fairly consistently pick them up, so you can't move block them in the same way like we did before. 1, 2 units of 10 Krieg combat engineers, all with shotguns. 1, 2, 3 units of them. And then we have more Krieg Heavy Weapon Squads, 3 whole units of them, all with the Krieg Heavy Flamers coming out in this as well. This is a unit that we see a lot of people taking all of a sudden as we get towards the end of the Knights meta, after the Chaos Knights are a little bit less common. And then 2 units of Aquilons. So the big thing about this that is a little bit interesting to me is these are relatively slow and they don't have any transports for them, but they are really good into things like Blood Angels, or what else is being played? It's probably pretty good into Chaos Cults. There's a lot of things that these are relatively good into that are pretty strong in the meta right now. However, you probably have to put a lot of them in reserve just because that's the only way they're going to be getting a lot of the angles that they need and the speed that they need in order to be effective. But you have a lot of the Krieg Combat Engineers, which are basically serving as budget Kazarkin, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 units of Rough Riders that can be a little bit of punch, that can create a lot of space for you, and then you have these 3 big hammers of Bridgehead Scions, just like we're used to seeing. So this is the second time that Brian Moody has done really well with this list. I believe the one he played a couple of weeks ago on his Breaking Point, almost identical. So this is another thing that we're starting to see. We are starting to see a return of Bridgehead a little bit more. Okay. Other one was Dan Sammons, and Dan Sammons is a player who I'm not used to seeing play guard this edition. I believe they probably played guard previously, but this is one of the first times I've seen them actually show up with the Astra Militarum this edition. I don't remember what they normally play. Maybe I'll put that in the description. Probably won't, to be honest. But we do see Dan coming out with the guard. 1 Cadian Command Squad with the Death Mask of Alanius, Gaunt's Ghost, 1 Rogaldorn Commander with Grand Strategist, 1 Tech Priest Engine Seer, Ursula Creed. So far, this is pretty normal stuff. The Tech Priest Engine Seer may be the least common thing that you tend to see. 1 unit of Cadian Shock Troops, along with Ursula Creed and the Cadian Command Squad. Again, pretty normal stuff. You are going to notice here that there were no Death Corps of Krieg units, which has become a mainstay of a lot of competitive guard lists. You had 1, 2, 3 units of 5 Death Riders. Again, a unit that we're starting to see a lot more presence of this week than we did previously, partly because we got the small patch where Knights are not as good, where Plague Burst Crawlers are not as good. These guys are starting to come back in. Another player bringing the Krieg Heavy Weapon Squad with Flamers, 3 Vanquishers, all with multi-meltas, and then 2 Rogaldorn Battle Tanks with Stubber, and then 3 Scout Sentinels. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where are they? 4, 5, 6 with the Death Riders. You already have these 6 units that are just going out and being annoying. The Heavy Weapon Squad, I'm really curious to see how it was actually used, but then you also have the 3 Vanquishers and 3 Rogaldorn Battle Tanks. Now, looking at this list, you do have this armored core of the 3 Rogaldorns that kind of have to stay relatively close to each other, but I would not be surprised if this is Dan using the Ursula Creed and the flexible command stratagem where you can ignore the regiment and squadron keyword restrictions for what can actually be ordered, simply because if you take the quick count, he's only got 3 squadron orders and he's got 6 tanks. So it's either the Rogel Dorn commander trying to stay close enough to the 2 Rogel Dorns to make sure that they are still hitting on 3s with the reroll 1s from the Scout Sentinels, or rather, the other thing, you also have all these Leman's Vanquishers, which are probably going without orders on most turns. This is what I was finding in a lot of my games when I was playing like 7 vehicles. I did not have enough orders for all of them, but on the turns where I needed all of my activations to be at maximum effectiveness, I could use that 2CP strat, and suddenly every single one of my vehicles was receiving an order. So again, a lot of tanks coming through, the 3 Rogel Dorns, the 3 Vanquishers, and then a lot of skirmishing pieces, or less skirmishing and more like screening pieces between the Scout Sentinels and the Death Riders. They can create a lot of space for us overall. Excuse me. But again, so we have, I would describe this as tanks in midboard. We had 1 triple Dorn Hammer of the Emperor. We have another tanks in midboard coming through. And then we can continue talking about what else we have. We have another combined arms. This one came through. It was Matthew Vick going 4-1 and getting 2nd place at Bugle Bat Reps. Only 20 players, so not the biggest thing in the world, but still a good result. Cadian Command Squad, 1 Rogel Dorn Commander with Grand Strategist, 1 with no enhancements. They both have... Oh, one of them has 2 Melted Guns, one of them has Heavy Stubbers. Interesting. Ursula Creed, Cadian Shock Troops, a big Cadian Shock Troops, 2 units of 10 Catachan Jungle Fighters. So before I go too far, one of the things that I have been interested in seeing, I have seen a couple of people take this as a, there's a couple ways that I've seen it used. The first one that I was rather impressed with, I played against Chris Daly, one of the stronger guard players down in Atlanta, not that long ago, and he was using this as his bodyguard for Ursula Creed. And this unit was really powerful, and it can be really powerful in shooting matchups because you can, with a 9-inch move, you can go ahead and make them touch the middle objective on every single deployment, and then you ask your opponent, what are you going to do about this? In shooting matchups, they usually want to shoot you off the middle of the board. They don't necessarily want to put anything out onto the center objective themselves, simply because it is too dangerous to do so. And depending on what terrain layout you're actually playing on, sometimes you can set up your guys such that if they want to shoot at your Cadians, you can always shoot back at them. Chris unfortunately made a small positioning error with his Cadian Shock Troops such that I was not taking in return fire, but that's one of the things you can do a lot of the time with the Cadians. I would not be surprised if that was something that Matt was doing as well. The 10 Cadians, just gives you options as to whether or not you want this unit to go play for your natural, like we oftentimes see with a 20-man Death Corps of Krieg unit, which is 25 points more expensive, but with the D3+1 res every turn, I would argue the 25 points is worth it, but this is something that you can do if you just want to save some points. Okay, 2 units of Jungle Fighters, 1, 2, 3 Chimeras. I'm sure this is a mistake, but 1 with Heavy Flamers and looks like 2 with Heavy Bolters. 1 big unit of Bulgrim, 1 unit of Kazarkin, 1 Luminous Battle Tank with Multi-Meltas, 1 Exterminator with Multi-Meltas, and 1 Ogren. So this is a bit less of a... I would generally describe these as more mid-board and then tanks, right? Because you have Cadians, Catachan, Chimera, Bulgrin, Kazarkin, and Ogren. And this is going to be a bit more of a brawly style. You tend to play a lot more. You tend to just like have more stuff to play the midboard than your opponent, and it doesn't have quite as much firepower as the one that we looked at with Dan Sammons or with Neil Burns Morales. But overall, still very successful. This is a very normal thing. The only thing that's really interesting here is the inclusion of 1 Cadian Shock Troops 10-man and 1 Cadian Shock Troops 20-man. Okay, let's continue going on. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but I think it's probably Shalon Kelly Irvin, or Shalon Kelly Irvin. Either way, playing Mechanized Assault. We've been seeing Mechanized Assault become a little bit more popular over the past couple of weeks. It is one of those things that I think a lot of people have been getting some burnout with playing combined because we've basically been playing the same detachment more or less since the edition started. I'm definitely feeling a little bit of burnout with combined as well, and Mechanized Assault is looking really good right now. Maybe not the strongest thing, but definitely it just changes the playstyle quite a bit, and Shallan was clearly one of these players. Also, a name that I haven't really seen pop up on our spreadsheets before, but still going 4-1, not bad. We have 1 Canadian Command Squad, 1 Commissar, 2 Rogothorn Commanders, both with Stubbers and Multi-Meltas, 1 Tech Priest Engine Seer with the Sacred Unguents enhancement. Oh, what up, buddy? All right, last time I got a lot of comments to show off the dog. Come here. Come here. Oh, he's small enough that I can just pick him up. And here he is. This is my mom's dog. His name is Bailey. We think he's some kind of Schnauzer mix, but we're not entirely sure. But he's very funny. He's very handsy, and he shakes his entire butt when he wags his tail. He doesn't really wag his tail. It is almost the entire back half of his body. Anyway, thank you, buddy. All right, I gotta finish recording this. He is now just hanging out. That's all right. We can pet him and talk at the same time. Okay, we have 1 unit Acadian Shock Troops, 1 Chimera with Bolters, 2 with Flamers, 1 Taurox. This is honestly like one of the most interesting things you see with Mechanized Assault. Is the number of transports that you actually take in Mechanized Assault varies a lot, right? You can see as few as 3, like David Gaylord was doing for a long time, and in our next list, you will see the opposite of that in just a moment. But we had 1, 2, 3 units of Kazarkin, 1, 2, 2 5-man combat engineers. It's worth noting that we know this was on the old patch because these are 70 points. So these go down in the near future. 1 Exterminator, 1 Ogryn, 1, 2 Scout Sentinels with autocannons. I don't think it really matters. I still like the las cannons a lot more than anything else on las Scout Sentinels, but they don't do any damage anyway, so it's whatever. And then 1 unit of Tempestuous Aquilons. So the big thing here is I always like to count how many things can we put inside the transports that we're bringing. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 transports. And this tells us quite a bit, or I guess we could put this, but you don't. And then you just kind of count the number of things and like how they're actually going to be used. Because we have 4 transports and slightly more than that, I'm expecting you probably start all 3 Kazarkin inside. You can consider putting 2 units of Krieg Engineers in 1, and one of the big things, this is one of the standard plays from a long time ago. If you ever watched my video with David Gaylord, one of the standard plays that you would do is you'd have like Catachan scout your transport forward, and then you would have Ogryn advance to get inside the transport afterwards. And the thing that this allows you to do is you can still shoot the Ogryn out the firing deck even if they advance, because it is now the vehicle shooting, not the Ogryn shooting. So you can do that with Krieg Engineers, you can do that with Kazarkin, and with all of those functional heavy bolter shots that you have all together, with full rerolls coming out from the Sacred Unguents, it's actually like not a bad package in order to go shoot things. You also have 1, 2 Rogel Dorns and an Exterminator, so it's not like you are just losing shootouts all the time. You will still lose shootouts against things like Combined Arms or like dedicated like shooting like lists, but against most lists, you have enough shooting to keep them honest. This was fairly interesting. And then overall, I do just want to take here, one of the things that we always look at, or I like to look at, is how often we see different things. And so the one that came up fairly recently is you can kind of see we actually had several people bringing Krieg heavy weapon squads over this past week. I swear there was one more. There it is. Brian Moody's list was very long. And we didn't really see, we saw Brian Moody do it again before, but otherwise they weren't very popular throughout most of this patch, right? You saw David Irving, is that Pepe Andrew, and like Patrick Greatbatch brought 1, and then I think took them out of his list immediately afterwards. right? Like they just were not very popular. However, the Krieg heavy weapon squads, we saw a lot of people bringing them this last week, which makes me interested in potentially like experimenting with them a little bit more. Yeah, so those are the things that we saw on the patch that is outgoing. However, we did get one event already on the new patch, and that one was played by Robert Moreland, and he was also playing Mechanized Assault. And Robert has been one of the best players down in Texas, or one of the best guard players down in Texas, and he consistently brings something a little bit offbeat. He was the guy who was playing a lot of super heavies. He was playing a Storm Sword, throughout a lot of early 10th edition. And recently, he's been really loving Mechanized Assault. He's been looking at it, and I know a lot of different players have been starting to shift over this way a little bit. I know John Winter Russell has been a big fan. My buddy Killian, he plays like everything, but he's been on guard recently, has been experimenting more with Mechanized Assault. There's a lot of people who have been looking at this as a potential alternative to combined arms. Anyway, this is Robert Moreland's take on it at, what was the event? Iron Cage down somewhere in Texas, I believe. Mechanized Assault, Gaunt's Ghost. We know this is on the new patch because Gaunt's Ghosts are 100 points in this. Militarium Tempestus Command Squad, one with smoke grenades, another one, a third Militarium Tempestus Command Squad, one unit Acadian Shock Troops, and then we have 1, 2, 3 Chimeras, all with heavy bolters, 1, 2, 3 Toraxes, 1, 2, 3 Torax Primes, all with Gatling autocannon. Then we had 1, 2, 3 Kazarkin, all with Meltoplasma. 1, 2 Ogren. 1 5-man Rattlings. 1 10-man Rattlings. 1, 2, 3 5-man Tempestus Scions. Now, there's a couple of things about this that I think are really interesting. The first one being that almost the entire army starts the game in a transport. You have Gaunt's Ghosts that are starting out in a transport. You have Cadians that I believe are also not starting in a transport. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 transports. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So realistically, when you take a look at this, it is 10 things going in 9 transports. And I think the only one of these that is not starting a transport is probably the 5-man Rattlings, because they just go out and are a screen. But because of that, we have, I just want to do a quick count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then these are all attached, so I won't count them separately. We have 21 activations in this list, which is a lot. Especially considering that a lot of the meta is still trying to play against Death Guard and Imperial Knights, and Eldar to a lesser extent. The fact that we have so many different things, and a lot of it is getting +1 to wound when it hops out of a transport, there's not a lot of armies that can contest this army for unit count. You just have a lot of ability to put OC wherever you want it, and you have these 3 Torax Primes, where with the 5-man Tempestus Scions and the Tempestus Command Squad popping out, getting full hit rerolls from the Torax Prime, full wound rerolls from the, Tempestus Scion rule, with sustained, hitting on 2s, +1 to wound. And it's a lot of output. It's a lot more output than a lot of people really think. And then you're able to get those 3 units who can potentially get full hit, full wound rerolls with +1 to wound. And you also can do 1 additional unit of Kazarkin, which when you use the stratagem for or you already get +1 to wound from popping out, but full wound and hit rerolls from clear and secure if your target is on transport. Suddenly, you're able to put out 4 units in 1 turn that are +1 to wound, full hit rerolls, full wound rerolls. That's a lot of damage coming out from this list in ways that I think a lot of people are not really expecting. I know when I played up against Daniel Harrison and his Mechanized Assault list at Teams last weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend before, I was surprised at how much damage unit of Kazarkin were doing against my Rogel Dorn that was on a transport. I think they did like 10 or 12 damage to like a Rogel Dorn, which is a lot, right? It just makes the your Meltas like way more consistent when you're hitting on like 2s rerolling, and then you're wounding on like 4s rerolling. and then your AP4, it's just a lot of damage that can be really hard to deal with. And this is one of those lists that I think is probably pretty interesting if we're expecting a lot of people to be prepared for the Knights meta, because this is very fast. It has a lot more damage than people expect, and kind of plays in ways that Bridgehead do, where you're just trying to blow up parts of your opponent's side of the board and collapse a flank at one time. So it's a really interesting list coming out from Robert Moreland. Whether or not this is going to continue being the style of Mechanized Assault that we see is harder to say. But overall, it's the only event that I know of that was on the new patch and had a guard player do well. Otherwise, we're still seeing a lot of pretty normal stuff combined. And then Brian Moody's been playing Bridgehead. We are seeing some success coming out of that as well. Hammer continues to be good. Mechanized Assault continuing to be a little bit more popular as time goes on. So not a whole lot of new stuff. I think the biggest takeaways from me this week, as we are like in that transition period of ending the previous patch and getting ready for the new patch, the models that are surprising me as things are taking, people are taking a lot more of them. Krieg Heavy Weapon Squad with Flamers. We saw like four of the players who did well had them. And then also, when I was just looking at, because I take a brief look at basically every list that's played, there were a lot. I'd say something like 60% of guard players were taking Krieg Heavy, at least one unit of Krieg Heavy Flamers in their list this last week, which was very surprising to me. The last thing, oh, and the other one, Death Riders. Both Brian Moody and Dan Sammons taking Death Riders. Brian had one unit, and Dan had three. I just want to take a quick look kind of across. Hold on. This is in the name. All right, whatever. Let's take a look. It's not a unit that was seeing a ton of play. We saw a couple of people, or like Marshall Peterson playing his mini horses before. We were seeing like sporadic play where we'd have like a weekend where it was taken a lot, but otherwise you weren't seeing a ton of it. Nick Jagiello really likes them. Nick Jagiello again taking them. But then they suddenly became really popular over the last like week. So definitely something to keep a look at. Krieg Heavy Flamers and Death Riders on the rise in terms of what people are playing. The last list that I want to show you guys did not come from a singles event, but rather came from a teams event. I don't normally look at teams event lists the same way because it is really hard to identify, like, is this a take-all-comers list? Is this supposed to be a defender? Is this a list that is built to really care about certain board picks? Is this list trying to hunt certain things? And it's really hard to know that information unless you are fairly directly told. And with that in mind, this is a list played by, I will go find his name real quick. I lied. I want to say it's Yepa Rasmus, I want to say, but this was played at a teams event in Sweden, and it went 95-5 over the weekend. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, he basically won on average. He was getting a 19-1, meaning that he was winning his games on average by about 40-ish points, right? That's a really big deal. And it was a list that had a lot of things I was not really expecting. The first one is a Krieg Command Squad. This is a unit that I generally think is pretty bad. So I was surprised to see it in a list, especially a combined arms list, but we'll take a look at the rest of it and it might make a little bit more sense. You have two Rogaldorn commanders. This is also in combined arms. Stubber, Multi-Melta, very normal stuff. And then this is where we start getting interesting. We have 1, 2, 3 units of 5 Death Rider, or Rough Riders, 1, 2, 3 units of Bulgren. And it was also really interesting because it was a split, right? You had Brute Shields, which are the 4-up invul, and Slab Shields with a +1 wound. And this is actually a bit of a more interesting decision now because in the Codex we have a 3-up save, and against a lot of like AP1, Damage 1, Slab Shields are actually better than Brute Shields. So we had 3 units that were all 4 Brute Shields, 2 Slab Shields. We had 1, 2 units of Death Riders, and then 2 Executioners, another unit that I was very surprised to see, and then 3 individual Scout Sentinels, all with las cannons. And so this is a very heavy horse list. There are a total of 5 units of 5 horses, and then the 2 Lemur's Executioners, a couple of Scout Sentinels, a lot of Bulgrin, and a couple of Rogaldorns. And the Kree Command Squad here is really interesting because I believe this is the thing that is standing on the home objective, which is a pretty big departure from a lot of the things that we're used to seeing. We were seeing it's almost every list brings 1 unit of 10 Cadians to just stand on your home objective, and then as the game goes on, maybe they'll go forward later on. But the Kree Command Squad, this army has basically no regiment orders in it at all. The only thing that has it is the Kree Command Squad, and the Kree Command Squad, you got the one guy, what's it called, the Servo Scribe guy? I think that's what it's called. Normally, this only gives 1 order per turn, but I believe it's once per game you can give a second order. And you also have a lot of things that are kind of asking for it. You have, all the different Rough Riders, you have the Death Riders, who are all asking for it, and the Scout Sentinels, they could use it as well. But other than that, it is just 2 Dorns, 2 Executioners, horses, and Bulgrin. And knowing that this was played in Sweden, almost definitely played on WTC terrain, where the speed that Rough Riders have and the fact that they are on relatively large bases, you can spread them out pretty effectively. Really, really effective screens with a couple of Bulgrin to control important places on the board. A couple of Executioners was a little bit surprising. I remember mentioning I probably would look at dropping like 1 Scout Sentinel or to turn these Executioners into either battle tanks or exterminators. But regardless, just wanted to bring this to your guys' attention. Something really interesting, something to consider trying, especially on your WTC boards. I do not think this would work on Games Workshop layouts just because it's too open. You can't take up the same kind of space. And I think there are better like shooting platforms you could probably bring. Anyway, like I said, overall, we had a pretty good weekend. 85 and 74, 53.5%. Pretty good players playing overall. If this is something that you guys are interested in seeing more of every Monday, or maybe once a week, maybe every 2 weeks or so, with a little bit more preparation involved, let me know, because I thought this was interesting. A lot of good players, a lot of cool stuff going on in the guard meta right now, and we got a new patch right around the corner. So, once again, this has been Josh with Joushi Howard. I'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.